So I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. It's really, really exciting that we had such a productive week in the legislature, and they've been working really hard. I want to thank everybody that's been joining for, golly, since I think January or February. Really appreciate all of the support and everybody out there dispersing information, getting people involved. I want to thank everybody that has been a part of the presentations. This has been just a pleasure to have and understand how the process works and get the inside information. And I see so many people on that have been instrumental in working on getting all the bills through this session and drumming up support. And I want to thank everybody for that. I want to thank the team. Of course, ToniAnne, Dashiell, the head of the group and getting us all motivated. Shirley Martinez, Pat Hastings, Karen Marshall, who puts everybody on the hot seat. And then Erica Watley, who gets out the emails for the Zoom and the notifications. So for our wrap-up call, we're going to have some thoughts from our fearless leaders. Chairman Click, good morning, and thank you for being on this long, arduous journey through the session. And I want to thank you so much for being such a big part of having this call come on. So to start off with, Chairman Click, can you tell us how many days have y'all been in session?
I believe it's 215. It historically is the 5th longest session, with all the specials. So we haven't broken records yet, but we've been in Austin a long time.
Many long nights and a lot of time just waiting around for the Democrats to show up and do their job.
Yes. And when you're in a special session in the final days, sometimes you're waiting on something to come over from the Senate as well. Paperwork that is needed for a bill to get on the floor for a vote.
And in part of that too, I found out several years ago, one of the things that the legislators do is y'all have to send stuff through Ledge Council or hire your own attorneys. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Ledge Council this session, due to COVID, was very, very backed up. We had half the number of drafting attorneys that we normally do in Ledge Council. And so one of the things that we did to kind of deal with that is when a bill goes to committee, usually the night before or the morning of a bill being heard in committee, you will get a bill analysis by Ledge Council. In this session, because of the shortage of attorneys, you didn't get the bill analysis until after the bill hearing. The theory was they thought that would cut down the number of bill analysis that would be needed because not every bill that's heard in committee gets voted out. Doesn't always garner sufficient support to be voted out of committee. And so that really, at the beginning of sessions, slowed things down considerably.
There's so many moving parts to all of that. And one of the things that I was wondering if you could give us a little glimpse into is how does the grassroots impact, progress of legislation in the legislature?
It impacts it, through the public hearing process. There are times when I've had my mind changed on legislation due to testimony that I've heard in public hearings. Somebody may have a unique angle or identify an unintended consequence of legislation. And it was, during the public hearing process that was identified. Sending emails, calling your legislators, telling them, what your thoughts are on the matters that are being considered, is a great way to weigh in.
Does it help does it help whenever they show up and support your bill, or?
Absolutely. And, if there's a bill that is a bad bill, it's also important that people tell us why. The more information you can provide, it's one thing to say, oh, I'm opposed to that bill. Tell us why. Because you may see something that we haven't. The more eyes that are on legislation with feedback, the better. We have a better work product when that happens.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody sort of to hear again how important it is for all of us to, dig in and reach out to our legislators and let them know, what we think and what we're learning. And then the other day when you and I were talking, I know election security for 2023 and it's going to be a big deal. And when you were chair of the Tarrant County Republican Party, you and your team helped to make sure that the voter rolls were updated. Could you give a couple of tips of what y'all did to make sure that the people voting were actually the people that were supposed to be voting?
One of the first things that we did is from our county elections administration, we would periodically get a new voter file of all the registered voters. And we would run a report in that database that would search for households that may have had 5 or more registered voters at one address. And then we would take those addresses, and you could go on Google Map or Google Earth, where you can actually see a photograph of that residence. And if you've got an 800 square foot house with 58 registered voters, in a very small home, that sends up red flags. And we did, more investigation and brought that to the attention of the county. Sometimes when you look on Google Earth, you sometimes need to actually go and look, because those Google Earth photos, they may be 2 years old, and maybe there's now an apartment complex at that address, when before there was a very small home. So sometimes it involves getting in your car and driving by there and seeing what that structure actually is. The other thing that we would do is we asked our county elections monthly to give us the list of new registered voters in the county. And we would go through that same process with, going on Google Earth, looking at that address, and making sure that it wasn't a vacant lot or a city park. And, if we found those types of situations, and you do occasionally, then we would bring it to the attention of our county elections administration, and they could send letters to verify that information. But, we did that all the time. We would also have our volunteers that were every day that were helping me on the phones during slow times. We would take the obituaries and go through and flag people that may have died in our voter file. And, you can't always tell if you've got a Mary Smith. That's a very common common name. And there may be lots of Mary Smiths in your particular county. But sometimes in looking at the obituary, you may learn the name of a spouse that can help you narrow down whether or not you've got the right Mary Smith. And again, we would alert our county elections administrator that, hey, here's Mary Smith's obituary. You know, can you do your research, send a letter to find out if this is the Mary Smith that recently passed away. You know, they've got a process in the state election code for doing that. So we would do this year round, not just at election time, but year round. And that helps keep the voter file clean. You know, those are some things that we did that going into this next election cycle, you guys might want to take back to your county chair and ask them to develop a similar program to keep that voter file clean.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think that's some really good tips for everybody. And it's going to take a lot of volunteers, and it's going to take a lot of people joining in, helping out with the process and working with our county chairs to make sure that those voter rolls are clean and accurate. So easy to vote, hard to cheat. That's the thing. Thank you, Stephanie.
Uh-huh.
All right, we're going to go to Representative Jetton and get some information from you. How excited were y'all to get those maps out of the house?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone. I guess it's gonna be the last meeting with everyone. It feels like it's been a long year getting to see everyone every Friday. But no, it was definitely nice getting through all of the maps. We knew that was going to be a big focus of this special session. We knew it was going to take a lot of time and focus, and we did. We spent a lot of time making sure that we were, hearing everyone and making sure that the maps were, we went through that fair, transparent, and legal process. And so, and I'm glad we got it all done, so we're not coming back for a fourth immediately, at least, and having to work on maps still.
And so that means that the elections should go off on time.
I mean, that's the hopes we have. I believe the first lawsuit hearing is on the 28th for the state maps. So that's next week. And so, that we'll see how that first hearing goes. And there's federal lawsuits already started on the congressional maps, and we'll see how that goes as well. But, I think they're gonna have a lot harder time arguing their stances on this one. We went through and we come through with the attorneys to make sure that we've addressed all the VRA issues and anything else that can come up. So,
what was your impressions of your first session? This is a big session.
I think if I can make it through this, I can make it through any of them. But no, it was a good process, a fun process. Got to meet a whole lot of people. Got to learn a lot about, you see it from the outside and you want to say that the grassroots has an impact. Being on the inside, I can tell you the grassroots absolutely has an impact. Y'all's input and involvement, no doubt, helped to shape and produce the outcomes that we had this year. And so it's been good to meet everyone and hear everyone's feedback and experiences. And just like Chairwoman Click said, y'all have different perspectives and bring different things to the table, and all those things help to form those arguments that we need to convince our colleagues to vote and change things in the legislation. So it's been a good learning experience. I've enjoyed it.
And so whenever you went into the legislature, did you realize how important your staff was?
I did. Being a former staffer, I like to think we were the most important people in the room. And so, no, it was good. So I was a staffer back in 2013 for now Senator Drew Springer, and it was good to see the role and understand the process going into this, and make sure that I had really smart and talented people that work for me. Not necessarily anybody from the building. Everyone I hired were new to the building. We teach them the process, but it was their understanding of and respect for the grassroots and for the for the conservative values and principles we have, and being trustworthy and hardworking and everything else. Those were all the things that I made sure I had in my staff, and they performed very well. I think we had a very successful, regular session and a couple of special sessions there because of the staff.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on these Friday morning calls. It's been very helpful, and it's been great to hear your perspective and what was going on and all the inside information. We really appreciate it. And especially thanks for taking questions and being open to let people have your email if they have questions about districts or anything else. So we really appreciate that.
I've really enjoyed it. I know we haven't always agreed on everything with everybody, and that's, I hope at the end of the day everybody felt I was honest and transparent. That's I think integrity matters the most, and hopefully everybody felt that I was cool with them and always willing to listen. That's the goal.
Well, thank you, Representative Jetton, and I concur. I think if you've gone through this session, you're equipped to go through any session. All right, we'll move on. I believe Senator Hughes is on with us. Good morning, Senator Hughes.
Good morning. How you doing?
We're doing good. Thank you so much again for joining us for our extended legislative coverage. We really appreciate it.
It's been really fun for me to get to connect. Again, many of us on this call have known each other for a while, and some folks I'm still getting to know. But as I mentioned, maybe last week, I'll be at the session or at an event or at another Republican event, and I'll run into folks who I get to connect with on this call and run into in person. Anyway, it's been really, really profitable for me to have these, to get to have these talks. So thank you for including me.
Oh, you bet. So how are you feeling about getting those maps out?
It's encouraging. You guys, the issues well. We had a short fuse because of the timing of when we received the data from the Census Department. We don't know exactly what the Biden administration was doing with that, but it took a while to get it. And so there is that concern that if we didn't get it done in time, it could delay the primary and mess a lot of things up. Also important that we do it right. And so I've just got to say, Joan Huffman, who chairs the Senate Redistricting Committee, most on this call are familiar with Senator Huffman, a former prosecutor and judge, a very accomplished lady, chaired that committee. She's a conservative, very smart, very thorough, and she follows the law closely. So Lieutenant Governor was right when he put her in charge of that committee, because as Representative Jetton mentioned, the Voting Rights Act and the Supreme Court law on the Voting Rights Act is so complicated. And so having her in charge really made a difference. She has an excellent staff, and she brought in some more expertise on redistricting for this session and really handled it well. And Representative Hunter over in the House, again, a sharp lawyer, experienced in this, been through this before. And so having the two of them in charge of the process, leading the process, where every rep and every senator had a voice, but having them lead the process, I think put us in good shape. So, of course, we're in court, and so we'll see how that goes. But we always expect to end up in court on redistricting. That was nothing new. And we feel good about these maps. And as this group knows them well, these maps are going to elect strong Republican majorities that are legal, that are fair, and these maps should last through a number of election cycles. So yeah, we are encouraged to have those done.
And I think everybody has spoken, well, Representative Jetton and Chair Click have spoken about the grassroots and how that sort of fuels the legislators. Did you find that to be true also?
Well, I certainly did. I know many times people think, well, I know that my rep, I know my senator agrees with me on this issue. I don't need to contact him. And even if we agree and we don't need to be convinced, it still helps us to hear from you. Doesn't take a whole lot, but an email, a call at least makes a difference, because when you are a member of the Senate, you're a member of the House, and you have a bill and you're trying to get that bill set for a hearing in a committee, because you have a short fuse to get that done. Then you're trying to get the bill voted out of that committee, then trying to get it on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate. Hearing from people back home makes a difference. Let's say you're the chairman of that committee and you're deciding which bills you're going to set. You only have so many hearings and so many slots for bills. And so a lot of good bills aren't going to make it. And so if I can go to that committee chairman and say, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, I've heard from a lot of people back home. I've heard from this many people. This is important to my district. It really does matter. So even on issues we agree with, a little email or a phone call from somebody back home, from grassroots folks, it matters. It really does. And of course, as I think Representative Click mentioned, we listen. It's interesting when you watch those hearings in Congress. That is all what's called invited testimony. They've arranged those witnesses, and sometimes the witnesses are helpful. Generally speaking, the members of the Congress have, not greatly influenced by the committee. By the committee testimony, they've pretty well made up their minds. But in the Texas House and the Texas Senate, we come to those hearings with open minds. And well, I'm not saying Congress doesn't have open minds, but in Texas House and Senate, it's easier for us to make changes, to listen. And so based on testimony in committee, bills change. It's not so much that a bill I was for, now I'm against, but we get an idea. Someone from the grassroots shows up and points out a problem in a bill we had not seen, or suggests a better way of doing it. So it really does matter. Calls and emails matter. And yes, if you can make it to Austin to testify or submit written testimony, it really matters. It's not just a cliche. Your input really does make a difference in Texas.
And sort of looking towards 2023, how do you see the volunteers as being sort of a key part of securing our elections?
Honestly, the unique thing about America, and this applies broadly and very specifically in elections. If you compare America to Europe or to other developed countries, of course, no one is where America is, but if you compare America to any other place where there's development, where the economy is established and people are not just living hand to mouth and people have an established standard of living, no other country, no other culture even comes close, even on the same chart as America in terms of volunteer hours, in terms of contributions. And we're talking about charitable, religious, political, up and down the system. Most countries, elections and political matters are funded by the state. The government takes tax dollars from you to do all that. But here in America, our system relies on volunteers. And that's good, right? That's important. Yes, we have money to fund the essentials, but the way our system is designed, there are places that can be filled only by volunteers. And if people don't show up and do that, it matters. It makes a difference. And let's think about poll watchers. Being a poll watcher is an important job. It's not an easy job. And those of us who were following election integrity, remember how poll watchers have been demonized this last year. I mean, demonized, vilified in the national media, in the state media. Almost every interview I did, people were, wanting to beat up on poll watchers. Just based on lies they'd been told, from the National Democratic Party. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was just lies. But that work is so important. The presence of a poll watcher makes a difference. And the poll watcher doing her job and reporting what's going on, it makes a difference. You've all heard it, that sunshine is the best disinfectant.
It's about redistricting.
It is. And so that's obviously one tremendous way. That's just one way.
And then, so is this your second time through the redistricting?
It is. I was a member of the House back in 2011 when we went through the redistricting process. I was not on the redistricting committee. I was on the Judiciary Committee, and the Speaker at that time put the Judiciary Committee working alongside redistricting to conduct the hearings because there were so many legal matters involved. But this is my first time to be on the redistricting committee, over here in the Senate. So yes, that's right.
And so what new did you learn through this session? I mean, through this redistricting session?
Well, it's interesting. The law has changed at the federal level since we did redistricting the last time. You know, for years, the U.S. Supreme Court is really just meddling, injected itself into the redistricting process. And I'm talking about the political part of the process. You know, historically, when the Democrats controlled Texas government, there was gross gerrymandering. And what I mean by that is, take Congress, for example. If you looked at all the votes that were cast for Congress in Texas, added them all up, you know, just putting them all together in all the different districts, add them up in the 1990 election cycle, the last time the Democrats drew the lines. So Texans were voting about 60% for Republican members of Congress, right? If you added up all the votes in every district, about 60% of the votes went for Republican candidates. Yet, you look at the map, and the Republicans had less than half of the seats in Congress. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that it's at least evidence that those lines are drawn in a way that favors the Democratic Party and that frustrates, that goes against the popular will of the people of Texas. And so politics is that way. Parties do that to each other. It's not fair. It's a political process. There's a political solution for that. Now, the Supreme Court used to inject itself into that and say, oh, this district has to be a certain shape. We don't like the way that one looks. You had judges that were just second guessing the elected politicians, elected by the people. And of course, there's a political solution. Texas responded to that what the Democrats were doing by electing Republicans. Now we draw lines that are fair. But my point is the Supreme Court used to tie the legislature's hands on political decisions in redistricting. But now, because of a case 4 or 5 years ago from the U.S. Supreme Court, this is the first redistricting cycle where the Supreme Court, the federal courts, do not look at the political decisions we make. Now, of course, the legislature is not allowed to do a racial gerrymander, and of course we wouldn't. That's wrong. It's against the law. It's against the Constitution. It's against the Voting Rights Act. So we don't do that. The good news is we can make political decisions based on the will of the people of Texas without having as much concern about the federal courts. We're going to follow the law. But the good news is the federal courts are taking, we believe, a more appropriate approach, a more constitutional approach. They're protecting racial minorities under the Constitution, but they're not injecting themselves into every political decision we make. And also the process of pre-clearance. With the Voting Rights Act of 1964, Texas, every southern state, every state that was part of the Confederacy, again, going back 100 years, they went back to the Confederacy, and every state that was part of the Confederacy, plus a number of counties in Michigan and California, were under what's called pre-clearance. And so that meant for 40 years, if we wanted to make any change to our voting procedures, and that means, Madam Chair, if we wanted to change the precinct lines for a water district in a rural county in Texas, anything that affected voting, before we could pass that law, we had to go to the U.S. Justice Department and say, is this okay? Pretty please, may we make this change? And the career lawyers at the Justice Department would decide whether it was okay. This was horrible. It was unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court finally got rid of that. So this is the first election cycle we're going through without that pre-clearance process. They're letting us be adults. They're letting us follow the law. And so this is a much better system, So yes, man, that's one big difference between the last time we did it and this time.
Yeah, that was a huge deal to get out of that pre-clearance and actually let the states determine where their district should be. I was going to ask you, did y'all get to open the doors and look through and see the speaker and the lieutenant governor?
We did. We got to do that this time. You know, in 2011, it happened to be that the Capitol was filled with protesters, and some of them were kind of upset. So the DPS did not want us opening all those doors up. But yes, this time we did. So the 2 doors that lead from the House chamber out to the main Capitol and 2 doors from the Senate out to the main Capitol, those were opened up. And so when it was time for the Senate to pass the Texas House of Representatives map and for the Texas House to pass the Texas Senate map, we did those simultaneously. So that's kind of a tradition. And yes, ma'am, that got done. We passed the House map with the Texas House map with no amendments, and the Texas House passed our map with no amendments. So yes, we got that done. And it's kind of a tradition, sort of a trust but verify, right? We trust each other to get those maps right. So we did get to do that.
Well, that's great. It's nice to be able to adhere to our traditions and have that still in the Texas House. Before we go to questions, is there anything else you'd like to share with the group?
You really hit the high spots. Well, I want to highlight something that's been in the news. You'll recall that Governor Abbott amended the call of the session to add the forensic audit of the 2020 election. We talked about the Arizona audit, what they learned. Meanwhile, the governor's office, their lawyers were looking at the law, and they looked at what we passed in Senate Bill 1 that already gives authority for a forensic audit. They also looked at the authority the Secretary of State already has, but just had not been maybe fully implementing. And so the governor yesterday announced the appointment of John Scott as our new Secretary of State. So when you guys get a chance, I think you're going to be very pleased with him. I've known him for some time. Back in 2013, you'll recall Texas passed a strong pro-life bill, the 20-week ban. It says, when a little baby has been developing in her mother's womb for 5 months, we know that baby can feel pain, and we're going to protect that little baby from abortion. That was the bill that Senator Wendy Davis filibustered. Got a lot of national media attention. Of course, her filibuster ended. Governor Perry called us back into special session, and we passed that bill. And by the way, we passed that bill, and it was upheld. That's the law today. Another example of how states have been getting more authority to protect human life. But I mentioned John Scott because after we passed that bill, we were challenged in court. And so the Attorney General's office defended us. And it was 2013. I went down to the federal courthouse in Austin to watch the trial because this was an important bill we had passed. And the lead lawyer for Texas is a guy named John Scott. He's an old friend of Governor Abbott, a very accomplished attorney, impressive legal resume, and he was the head of the civil litigation for Texas. He did a masterful job on that case. He also represented Texas when we passed voter ID, and we got sued for that, and won that case, led the Texas lawyers winning that case. A lot of things like that. He did work for the Donald Trump campaign during the 2020 election. And so Governor Abbott has just announced his appointment as Secretary of State. And I can just tell you the folks on this call, because I know him, because I've handled cases with him, he is going to be smart and aggressive and follow the law. And I feel good knowing that he's going to be in charge of this audit. He will not leave any trail not followed. He'll follow the law. He'll use every tool given to him. And if he needs more tools, he'll come back to the legislature for them. So I think we're going to be very pleased with John Scott as our Secretary of State and overseeing these audits. And again, implementing Senate Bill 1, making sure our elections are working like they're supposed to. We're going to be very happy with him. And so we'll be watching that very closely.
Thank you for that update, Senator. All right, Karen Marshall, are you ready with the questions for the hot seat?
Indeed, I am. I think you guys have worn people out with this many sessions. They haven't been flying thick and fast this morning as usual. But I've got a good one for your first question. Alan Vera asks, what factors led to the unpairing of Sheila Jackson Lee and Al Green?
And so I can say this I mentioned to you that the Supreme Court has given us more latitude now, and we are not, we're allowed to make political decisions. And so in the Senate, when we were drawing that congressional map, the law says that we are supposed to go through and draw those lines based on communities of interest and population, and draw those lines without considering race. And then after you draw the lines, you go back and you determine, did those lines we drew do anything improper based on race? Does it limit minority representation? Does it do what they call retrogression? And so that's what we did. We drew those lines in the Senate with very sharp lawyers helping, and then went back and looked. And when those lines came out, it had the effect of pairing, putting Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee and Congressman Al Green, two Democratic congressmen from the Houston area, but both happen to be African Americans. It put their homes in the same district. And again, based on the law, that's where the lines fell. That's where the population fell. It did not look like a violation of the Voting Rights Act. And so the Senate sent that bill over to the House, but the House and Senate continued to work together. And there was a lot of input from the community, from the district. Folks in the districts did not like that, did not like the two of them being paired. Either one of them could have moved and won in an adjoining district, but the communities were not happy about that. And so the lawyers in the House and the Senate looked at it, and they realized there was a way to avoid pairing those two congressmen that still followed the law, still followed the Voting Rights Act. It was not going to affect the net number of Democrats or the net number of Republicans, just about who they were. And so the decision was made that if we paired them, it would look like we were going out of our way to pair these two African-American Democratic congressmen, even though we weren't. At the end of the day, the numbers were going to be the same. They were both going to be reelected very likely in whatever district they ran in. So the decision was made in the House, and the Senate agreed that there was a way to unpair them that didn't hurt Republicans, didn't hurt Democrats. And so that's what the community wanted, and we could do that without hurting the map. So I'm anxious to hear the perspective of my friends in the House, but that's what it looked like from the Senate.
I'll jump in. That's right. I think Senator Hughes nailed it around the head. On the House side, we did go through the hearing process. That was something that came up a lot during that process. And, as we say, the grassroots plays a big role in this. The grassroots showed up on the other side and were very vocal about this issue. And it was important that, we have some evidence of, hey, we had these hearings, we listened to the voices of those that came out, and that change was made. But the overall makeup of the map is still strong, and it didn't impact. I don't think that negatively impacts the state or those in that region. Fair, transparent, and legal is our mantra to this whole thing, and I think that's where we ended up.
Yeah, and let me jump in just for a second. From the outside looking in, having studied a lot of these cases and looked at the reasons that a court will take jurisdiction, this is that not listening to the grassroots on that issue, that it's a big deal. And if we let them open that door, just based on that, then the court has more say over the maps that we do draw. So taking into consideration, what the grassroots said, and then it's not going to impact the overall numbers. While, we don't agree with Sheila Jackson Lee and we don't agree with Congressman Green, at the same time, there's no reason to cut your nose off to spite your face. So, that's just my 2 cents as a lawyer looking in it and looking at a lot of these cases when federal courts will step in. And what it does, I think it gives the legislature, more firm standing, because they did take in consideration the Democrat wishes on those courts. So I think it just solidifies the position on those maps. Go ahead, Karen.
That's right.
All right. The next question is from Jim Sutton. Can Representative Jetton, Representative Click, or Senator Hughes speak specifically to the factors that changed District 92, Jeff Cason's district in Tarrant County?
One of the things, and I was not on redistricting at all, and so did not draw any maps. But one of the things that I learned from members of the committee was the population changes in Tarrant County really only provided for 10 and a half state house seats, and we have 11. And so trying to get enough population, that particular district has been trending Democrat. The margins that Representative Kaysen won by last election were pretty thin. The prior election, the incumbent, Jonathan Stickland, did not even get a majority. He won by a plurality. It was like 49 point something percent. So as I understand it, the fact is we did not have enough Republicans to put into that district. Many of us, like my district, I had to gain population. So, you know, sometimes that happens, but, you know, other areas of the state with trying to equalize populations, the numbers worked out that we really only have enough population in the county for 10 and a half house seats, but we've got 11.
And I'll just jump in there. And then that's right. There's basically, from the committee standpoint, you know, concepts and, you know, suggestions are given to the chairman, Chairman Hunter, and the map is put together. You know, I can tell you, and then those from each county talk as a delegation to try and state their case. And I, from my standpoint and from the standpoint of many on the committee, there wasn't much communication from Representative Kaysen, if at all. And you know, I know that there were some calls and emails put in from grassroots, but when the member isn't involved in trying to save their own district, we're not going to typically fight harder for their district than they will. And you know, that's just the outcome of that's just the reality of what happened. And you know, as far as 92 goes, as far as the maps overall go, there's with all the population changes, with increase in population in Texas, there was going to be changes. And you know, it's all hands on deck. Everybody, all of the legislators are out there making sure that their voice is heard as to how their districts end up. And you know, we do the best we can with that. Not everyone's going to be happy, but that's change isn't always easy. And this is where we're at now.
All right, and the next question is, will there be a fourth session to fix the downgraded fraud penalties in election integrity, prevent private vaccine mandates, and authorize an audit? These are major items for conservative voters, Jen Matthews says.
That's
so Governor Abbott. So well, go ahead, Madam Chair.
That's up to the governor.
That's right. Governor Abbott said that his office said, I think yesterday, they don't anticipate one right away. And of course, each of those issues are important to everybody on this call and all the legislators on this call I know as well. Again, on the forensic audit, I think that Governor Abbott wants to give the Secretary of State an opportunity to do it with the tools we've already given them. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Again, I'm very excited about this new Secretary of State, and I think we're going to be pleased with the audit that they come up with. But there's always going to be more work to do. And of course, you guys know this is a part-time citizen legislature. We have chosen in Texas, the people of Texas have chosen not to have a full-time year-round legislature. And I think that's part of the governor's decision process. It is time to go home and get back to work and live under the laws we made. But are we for dealing with those issues? You bet. You bet we are. In fact, I filed bills on each one of those things. And we're definitely for that. And if the governor sees fit to call us back, we'll get back there and get it done. And he didn't say never. He just said right now he doesn't think is the time. So as Chairman Click said, that's completely up to the governor. But if he does call us back, we're going to tackle those things.
And I'll add one thing on the vaccine mandate one. I was on the phone with the OAG's office yesterday, just touching base on that, because that is an important issue. It's definitely something that is, rising in concern for everybody because of the reality of the situation. The OAG's office stands ready with a lot of other states ready to pounce the second that the rule is finally published. And that's really what's holding back from the lawsuits, it appears, is just the rule hasn't actually been published, that the vaccine mandate is required for those companies, organizations that have contracts with the federal government. And so, but they do feel pretty confident that the second that happens, that we're able to jump on that and install that process. And so, and I think that's kind of what we're all hoping for, is that this will get settled through the courts, because it is blatantly unconstitutional. President's admitted that he believes it's unconstitutional. And so I think it's our goal still is that the Constitution is going to hold up. The judicial system is still going to play its vital role in this process, and we're gonna get this thing squashed that way. But if it doesn't, I think we're all ready to come back and do what's necessary if that time comes.
All right, the next question comes from Meg Seth. I don't know about this. She said, is anyone going to help Harris County during the Hidalgo-Ellis arbitration redistricting disaster? Why did the GOP drop the ball in Ellis fraud indictment?
Not sure we have anybody that's an expert on that issue. We'll probably have to.
I have to dig more into that. I'm not aware of the situation.
And the next question is, does anyone know when the governor is going to sign the redistricting map bills?
I don't know if he's announced that, but I anticipate it'll be pretty quick. I haven't heard if there's going to be a ceremony or when or where, but I bet he'll do it fairly quickly.
All right. Can we get a little more detail, please, on the likely primary date and all the different filing periods, such as for candidates and precinct chairs?
Yeah,
we passed the maps. Go ahead, Representative, please.
You're good, Senator Hughes. Go for it.
I was going to say, our goal was to get these maps passed by our drop dead date. We aimed for was November the 15th. We thought it looked to us, if we could get the maps done by November the 15th, we could get everything on track and maintain the dates. And so we beat that goal by quite a bit. Of course, it's going to depend on what the courts do. We've already been sued a couple of times in redistricting, but right now there's guarded optimism that we're still on track. But I'll still defer to Representative Jetton.
Yeah, I think that's right. We're still on track, and if you want to be a precinct chair, I think that application period opened back in September. So you still got, I believe you can go and file right now if you want to. We can always use more precinct chairs, I know.
Hey, Donna Davidson, you want to give us a 2-minute deadline deal, or?
Well, I just so happen to have the law in my hand about the temporary provisions, and Senator Hughes was absolutely right. Because the absolute drop dead deadline was November 15th, the applications for a place on the ballot should remain the same of November 13th through December 13th. The general primary election date should still be March 1st. And the runoff primary election date is May 24th. I'm reading exactly out of the law as passed. So there's a little bit more detail that I'm trying to just glance through. But yes, and Representative Jetton was absolutely correct. I know county chairs were already accepting applications for precinct chair positions starting, that was in September 13th. So the thing to be cognizant of now is that the maps are done for state representative and state senate districts, et cetera. The county commissioners courts are all now starting to do their redistricting. We have some counties that are our clients that have asked, or they're in the process of putting together their maps. So it's possible that precinct chairs could end up in different precincts or paired at that level. So you need to be watchful of all of that. And if you are a precinct chair, participate in your county commissioners courts redistricting processes now. And it's not just them. Cities will be going through redistricting. Redistricting is not done. I mean, it is, and I'm very happy for Senator Hughes and Representative Jetton and Chair Click. It is done for them. Now it's the domino effect that comes down to the counties, cities, even we have a potential client that's a underground water conservation district that we're going to bid on helping do their redistricting. So understand you're not done yet as a citizen. Redistricting is still going on potentially for you. And I'm sure everybody wanted to hear that, so I'll be quiet now.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate that.
One of the other things, once the counties and the cities and so forth do their redistricting, sometimes you have precincts get the configuration or boundaries of a precinct change. They may have to slice it due to where a line is coming in so that the ballot for that precinct remains the same. So Donna is exactly right. You need to really follow that process at the county level, because you may, if you're a precinct chair, you may have filed in one precinct, but due to changes in the boundaries of that precinct, you may find that you're in another precinct.
Thank you. Karen, do you have one more question or are you done?
I'm afraid people have doused the hot seat. That's all I have for today.
Well, that's great. We got everybody's questions answered. We really appreciate that.
No more burning questions.
That's good. And I just had, I want to go back to each one, and Chairman Click, do you have any closing words for the call?
The whole focus of these calls has been on election integrity. And one of the best things that folks on the call can do to help locally on that issue is by being an election judge or an election clerk. The more Republicans we have working at a polling site, the fewer poll watchers we need. And if you want to help, or you've got friends that are very interested in this issue, getting them involved and working at a polling place on election day is one of the best ways to preserve and protect our elections.
Thank you. That's so true. Representative Jetton, closing words.
No, again, I appreciate everyone's involvement through this whole process. I genuinely hope that everybody feels like elections today, with the laws that have been passed, will make for secure, safer elections going forward than what they felt like after 2020. It's so crucial that we have rebuilt that faith in the elections process. It's important for us, I think, to look at the wins, where we did make good progress in securing our elections, and make sure that people understand that, and that they can go and vote in the next election cycle and feel that their vote is being counted, that it's not going to get squashed out by someone else. If we as Republicans allow our fellow Republicans to lose faith in the election process and not vote, then we've lost the state and we've lost the country. And so just know that all the work that you've put in this year has produced results. There's fruit, and it's just so important that we go out there and make sure that we share that with everyone else. And so again, thank y'all for all that y'all have done over this year, and it's greatly appreciated and had an impact. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Jetton, and congratulations on completing your first session.
Thank you.
Senator Hughes, closing remarks.
Oh, thank you so much. They said it very well. As conservatives, especially when the Democrats have the White House and when they have the Congress, our job is to fight. We always have to be diligent. We have to fight. We do that very well. Even in Texas, we have to push. Many times we don't realize when we won, and we can take a breath and we can take heart and we can be encouraged. I want to tell the folks on this call, this session and these special sessions, we won. You won. Congratulations. There's always going to be work to do, but this has been great accomplishments. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago with state reps and senators and secretaries of state from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Kentucky, states all over the country. Georgia worked on election integrity. And I want to tell you, Texas by far has the most secure, the most accessible system, and it's going to be even better, even stronger now. So we won. Is there work to do? You bet. We can't sit around and start sleeping in now. We still got work to do, but be thankful. Congratulations. We won. Your involvement matters. We understand this. You know this in this system where our rights don't come from government, they come from God. And in America, the people are the sovereign, the people are the king. Your involvement matters. And that same God who gave you those individual rights that government cannot take away, that same God loves you so much that his son, Jesus Christ, the creator, humbled himself and came to this earth and lived a perfect sinless life and then died and paid the price for our sins. And he rose from the grave. You know this, when he ascended into heaven, and he's coming back quickly. And we want to be busy about his business here in the meantime. He offers us a relationship with him and forgiveness of our sins in the meantime. And you know that. And by the way, that message was not from the state of Texas. That was from me, because I'm your friend, because I care about you. And I'm enjoying my free speech and my free exercise. So thank you for what you're doing. God gave us great victories this session. We won. Is there work to do? Yes, but be encouraged. We're all happy warriors. And after this year, we should all be reaffirmed that being happy warriors is the way to win.
Thank you so much, Senator Hughes. Really appreciate it. And appreciate all of your work and your representation, and appreciate you too, Representative Jetton, and of course, Chair Click. It's just great to have this kind of leadership in the state of Texas. And this is what's continuing to make us the greatest state in the nation and being leaders in the United States. And ToniAnne would, she would emphasize that she really appreciates everybody's support and everybody being on. And is, you know, ToniAnne's the big connector. So she's encouraging us to go out there and connect into election security, connect into getting people to vote. As Representative Jetton said, give them confidence, give them courage to vote. And Donna brought up a very good point, call to action. Get involved with the redistricting in your local areas. Make sure that you're being heard and that the lines are where you think they need to be. So it's been great being with y'all, and that's a wrap for this session. And really appreciate everybody being on, and look forward to visiting with y'all probably next year sometime. We're probably going to start up an election integrity training call, but it won't be until January. So thank y'all, and y'all have a great rest of the year.
Thank you. Be